At the loudest intersection in the city, cars rumbled like thunder, and most folks didn't even notice. The only one who did was Emma, wearing scuffed shoes held together by patches and carrying a bag stitched in pieces. She spotted an old man frozen at the edge of the sidewalk, his cane shaking while traffic tore past him. Everyone else kept moving as if he wasn't even there. Some people even chuckled when Emma stepped forward. But she didn't back down. She tightened her grip, steadied the man, and guided him through the blaring horns and screaming tires until both of them landed safely on the far curb. She figured that was the end of it, but the look in his eyes told a different story. There was something hidden there, something that would spark a chain of events that could rattle the whole city. If you want to find out what your husband is hiding, I recommend listening to this story until the end. But before that, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and write your opinion under this video. This will greatly help the channel's development. Now the real beginning rolled in. The morning sun spread across Los Angeles like a thin coat of golden paint, though its glow never quite reached the narrow streets where she walked. Her backpack sagged low against her shoulders, the seams held together with mismatched thread. Every pebble pressed against the worn soles of her shoes, but Emma kept her chin up, breathing steady and counting each step like it mattered. From a corner bakery drifted a sweet puff of cinnamon and warm air. She stopped just long enough to savor it, closed her eyes, then kept moving. At the main crosswalk, the city roared to life, buses exhaled, scooters darted through gaps, headlights blinked even in broad daylight. She paused at the curb, folded her arms across her chest, and let the wind from a passing truck rattle the broken zipper of her bag. That's when she saw him. An old white man stood a few feet away, cane trembling at the tip, hat crooked, breath uneven. His lips pressed tight as if the street itself were lined with teeth. Emma watched his shoe inch forward, then retreat. He tugged at his sleeve, blinked hard, and studied the stream of cars like a puzzle he couldn't solve. No one slowed down. A couple strolled by with iced coffees, the man snapping a picture of something behind her without noticing either of them. A teenager zipped past on a scooter, laughing into his mic, leaving behind the sharp smell of fuel and rubber. From behind a mailbox, two women gossiped in low voices like a local radio signal. "That's the girl who cleans after school," one whispered, barely moving her lips. "Always looks tired." The other hummed and muttered, "Yeah, people like her should stick to their own problems." Emma felt their eyes slide away when she turned. The strap of her backpack rubbed against her collarbone, so she rolled her shoulder and considered just walking on. She had a shift waiting later, homework stacked up, and a sink at home that groaned whenever the tap was turned. But something about the way his knuckles whitened around that cane, the way his breath caught like a clock skipping seconds, kept her from leaving. She stepped closer, palms open, her heartbeat slowing to a steadier rhythm. The noise of the city pressed against her chest. Heat shimmered off the asphalt, carrying the sour tang of oil mixed with old rain. She placed her feet at the edge of the painted crosswalk, tested her balance, and searched for an opening in the rush. Cars streamed past like steel fish. She breathed in, breathed out, counted to 3. A horn blared. Tires hissed. She raised her hand, small but steady, and the first car slowed. Then another. One breath. 2. She moved forward a half step. Then another, always checking his feet, the cane, and the distance left to the curb. Her hand hovered near his arm, close enough to catch him if he stumbled, far enough not to startle. He shifted his weight, swayed, then found his footing again. Emma leaned back slightly, ready in case his ankle gave out. From the shade of a bus stop, a couple of boys muttered, "Look at her, acting like a hero." One scoffed, "For what? Nobody's recording." The other just shrugged, though he kept his eyes on her. The traffic light changed. Engines growled. Time seemed to stretch thin. She waited until the surge faded, until the flow cracked open like a door. Then, slowly and carefully, she matched her steps with his. She didn't rush him or tug, she simply moved with him, a quiet escort through the chaos. Every step felt like a word she refused to swallow. At the midpoint, a bus mirror skimmed so close it brushed the air against her sleeve. She didn't flinch. She adjusted, breathed steady, and eased him into a rhythm that lined up with the painted stripes beneath their shoes. The far curb sat there, distant enough to doubt but close enough to believe in. Sweat gathered at her hairline. Her fingers tingled. They finally stepped onto the last painted stripe. Emma guided the old man onto solid ground, checked his footing, and let the roar of traffic fade back into ordinary background noise. Her chest lifted and sank, her shoulders dropped a notch, and she brushed a speck of dirt off her skirt. Sliding her backpack higher, she got ready to carry on with her day, no fuss about it. Behind her, the city kept buzzing like nothing had changed. Ahead, the day seemed to open just a little wider. Once they reached the sidewalk, the old man leaned harder on his cane. His breath rattled, but he kept nodding, like he was telling himself he'd survived one more crossing. Emma lingered, turning her bag strap in her hands. She didn't expect thanks. She didn't expect anything at all, she'd just done what seemed right. But his voice caught her anyway, thin and worn, yet heavy with gratitude. You kept me from falling." He tapped the cane against the ground like it was punctuation, his eyes searching her face for a name he didn't know. She tilted her head, offered him a quick, shy smile that vanished almost instantly, and muttered that anyone would have done the same. Then she hitched her bag up and stepped away, ready to melt back into the crowd. Not everyone saw it that way. From the bus stop, two teenagers leaned against the pole with their arms crossed. One scoffed loud enough to sting, "That's the girl with the patched shoes. Look at her, acting like she's some kind of guardian." The other sneered under his breath, "Just wait till she trips. Always pretending she's a saint." Their laughter spilled into the hum of traffic and reached her ears. Emma pretended not to notice, though the heat rising in her cheeks gave her away. Her fingers picked at the ragged corner of her backpack strap. She'd heard that tone her whole life, the kind that measured her worth by what she didn't own. But then she caught the old man's gaze. His expression wasn't mocking. Instead, it held something softer, almost thoughtful. A truck coughed out a puff of black smoke as it pulled away, and she blinked against it, shifted her stance, and gave him a small nod before moving on. Her stride looked steady, but her heart beat faster. She wondered if she'd seemed foolish, helping a stranger when her own roof leaked every time it rained. Still, the memory of his cane shaking in the road, and how close his foot had come to slipping, stuck with her. The old man stayed behind, leaning on his cane, watching her vanish into the street. A car door slammed somewhere close, making him flinch, but he didn't look away. His lips curved, not in amusement but in recognition, like he'd just seen something the rest of the city had missed. By the bakery window, two women who had been watching the crossing whispered again. "Strange girl," one muttered. "Always giving away more than she can afford." The other tapped the glass absent-mindedly, eyes on the nearly empty street. "And maybe that's why I can't stop noticing her." Meanwhile, Emma turned the corner, shoulders set against their whispers. She tugged her sweater sleeve lower, tightened the knot on her bag strap, and let the city's noise wash back over her. Her kindness hadn't cost her anything except unwanted attention. She didn't crave thanks, but still, something sat heavy in her chest. Not shame, something harder to name. She didn't notice the old man straighten, glance one more time in her direction, and then walk away, his mind already working. The week rolled on with its usual rhythm, school bells ringing, cleaning shifts dragging, and evenings spent juggling dishes, laundry, and homework. Emma kept her head down, repeating the routine she'd known for as long as she could remember. What she didn't see was that someone else had started paying attention. It happened one late afternoon when the light turned golden and the air smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass and wood smoke. A knock rattled her family's flimsy front door. Emma froze mid-step, hands still wet from scrubbing a pan. They never had visitors. Her mother glanced up, frowned, then wiped her palms on her apron and cracked the door open. Standing there, framed in sunlight, was the same old man she had helped days earlier. But this time, he didn't look weak or lost. His shoulders were straight, his boots planted firm on the porch boards, and the cane rested in his hand more out of habit than necessity. Behind him, a truck idled, its bed stacked with wooden crates painted with a name everyone in Los Angeles recognized. It was the largest farm in the city. The sight of that name made Emma's breath catch. That farm wasn't just land. It wasn't just land, it was power. That farm stood as the backbone of the whole community, feeding schools, markets, and restaurants alike. And now its owner was standing right there in her doorway. Emma's mother stumbled over her words, trying to greet him politely, but the man's eyes had already shifted toward Emma. His gaze softened as if he were confirming something he already suspected. "You didn't recognize me, did you?" His voice carried strength now, deep and certain. Emma shook her head slowly, clutching the dripping dish rag, suddenly feeling like a stranger inside her own home. He stepped inside carefully, boots silent against the worn rug. His eyes traveled across the room, the ceiling stained with leaks, the furniture patched together, corners that whispered of quiet struggle. Touching the brim of his hat, he spoke low, steady, and sure. "That day at the crossing, you thought you were just helping a stranger. But I knew the truth right then. You didn't weigh the cost. You didn't stop to measure whether it was worth it. You simply chose to hold on." Her chest tightened, unsure whether to feel proud or embarrassed under his words. She glanced toward her mother, who only looked back, bewildered, caught between confusion and awe. Then the old man lowered a small crate onto the table. Apples gleamed red inside, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth, jars filled with golden honey. The smell filled the kitchen, sweet and rich. Her little brother came running in, eyes wide at the sight of food, but froze when he noticed the farmer standing there. The man gripped his cane, though now it seemed less a crutch and more a mark of steadiness. "They call me the richest farmer in Los Angeles," he said, voice softer now. "They see barns, land, and money. But none of that means a thing if I can't find people who remember what really matters. You showed me that at the curb. That's why I came here, because I won't forget it." Emma swallowed hard, still holding the rag, water dripping onto the floorboards. For the first time, she realized that one small choice, choosing not to let him fall, had opened a door she never imagined. The crate sat heavy on the little kitchen table, steam from the bread curling into the dim air. Her brother leaned forward, nose twitching at the sweetness, but too shy to touch. Her mother pressed a hand to her lips, torn between gratitude and disbelief. The farmer shifted, boots creaking against the floor. His eyes scanned the cracked window patched with tape, the chairs held together with nails, wallpaper peeling at the edges. But he didn't look with pity. His gaze softened with recognition, as if he'd stood in rooms like this before. "You gave me more than help that day," he said, steadying his cane against the table. "You gave me proof that kindness still lives in this town." His eyes found Emma's again, watching the way her fingers twisted the rag. "When no one else saw me, you did. And when I faltered, you held steady. That choice showed me something no amount of money ever could." Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to say it was nothing, that she was only being decent, but her voice stuck in her chest. The farmer reached into his coat and set a paper envelope on the table, unfolding it gently. Inside lay a scholarship form stamped with the farm's seal. Her mother gasped, gripping the back of a chair. "I can pay for your schooling," he continued, his tone firm. "Not as charity, not as a handout, this is an investment. Because I've seen what the world overlooks when it only judges by clothes or pockets." Through the half-open window, voices drifted in from neighbors passing by. "Isn't that the rich farmer's truck?" one asked. Another snickered, probably dropping off scraps. "Poor thing must have begged." Emma's shoulders stiffened at the words, but the farmer heard them too. His jaw tightened, eyes flashing, not frail, but sharp, lined with the weight of choices and battles past. Then he turned back to her. Ignore them. They've spent their lives counting pennies and gossiping. But you've already proven yourself richer than they'll ever be. Her eyes burned, tears pressing hot even as she blinked hard, trying to push them away. Her mother wiped her cheeks quickly with the edge of her apron, whispering thanks so fast the words tumbled over each other. But the farmer wasn't finished. He looked at her and said firmly, "There's work for honest hands at my farm. Fair wages that can keep this roof standing, and meals that won't end with your children going to bed hungry." Her little brother's eyes went wide. His small fingers finally reached for one of the bright apples in the crate. He bit into it with a loud crunch, juice running down his chin, and the sound of his laughter filled the room, something rare enough to feel like a gift. Emma stood frozen, breath uneven, the rag still damp in her hand. Words wouldn't come, not yet. But deep down, something new took root inside her, a small but steady voice whispering, "Your kindness wasn't wasted." Someone saw it. And even though the world outside their door still muttered cruel opinions, the air inside that kitchen felt different, like the first clean breeze that follows a storm. Months passed, and Emma's life began to shift. Not overnight, not like in fairy tales, but little by little, the way a seed breaks the soil before anyone notices. She started waking earlier, sometimes before the sun, to study the books the farmer had pressed into her hands. Her mother now walked each morning to the farmer's fields, her back straight, her steps proud with the dignity of real work. Her palms no longer burned from scrubbing strangers' floors for scraps. At first, the town only whispered about the change. Then came the stares. When Emma rode to school in the farmer's truck, kids pressed their noses against the windows. "That can't be her," they muttered. Others scoffed, saying she was just lucky. But luck couldn't explain why she kept working harder than anyone else, why she carried kindness like armor, why she refused to bend to the noise. One evening, the school auditorium buzzed with chatter. Wooden chairs scraped, programs rustled, and the smell of chalk mixed with cheap perfume. On stage, Emma's name was called for academic excellence. She stepped forward, braids neatly brushed, a simple clean dress swaying at her knees. Her shoes, plain but new, clicked softly against the polished floor. The applause rose, and her mother clapped the loudest, tears shining in her eyes. Beside her, the farmer sat tall, cane resting by his chair, pride glowing in the deep lines of his face. Emma paused beneath the stage lights, breath caught in her throat. She wasn't the girl with the patched backpack anymore. She wasn't invisible. She lowered her head, not in boasting, but in respect for the moment. And in that quiet beat, she knew the truth. The decision she made at a noisy crosswalk, to hold steady, to notice someone everyone else ignored, had carried her farther than she ever imagined. The audience roared, but one truth rang louder than the applause: sometimes the smallest act of compassion becomes the spark that changes not just a single life, but the way an entire town sees itself. And if just hearing a story can move you, remember this: small acts of kindness can rewrite whole destinies. So if this message struck a chord, don't walk away just yet. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories that challenge how you see the world. And if you know someone who needs this reminder today, share it with them. Your click might be the kindness that changes their path.